Hello, and welcome to Tell Me About Your Song, the podcast where I talk to musicians and songwriters about a song they've written. Today's guest is Adam Levy, and the song he'll be talking about is from his album The Heart Collector and is named Painting by Numbers. So where would you like to start with this song, Adam?
The song came out of a period where I'd had a bit of a slow period in my songwriting. I'd gone from writing pretty regularly to not writing at all. And so, in order to get writing again, I decided it would be fun to start like a little songwriting club. And it was really inspired by a couple of things that were going on around me. One, I was living in New York at the time, and I used to, for a little while, drop in on these Monday night gatherings that Jack Hardy used to have. Jack was a really great songwriter based in New York. For years and years, he used to do these Monday night gatherings at his tiny little apartment in New York City, very old school kind of New York apartment where, the bathroom is actually down the hall. There's really just like two small rooms was the whole place. And he would invite people over, and the thing was, you could bring some wine, and he would cook a nice vegetarian meal for everybody to share. And once we'd had the food and some wine had been consumed, everybody could sing a brand new song. There weren't a lot of rules, but one of the rules was it really had to be a new song. He didn't want to hear something that you'd been, workshopping for weeks and weeks and weeks. His thing was every Monday you show up with a new song. If you can do that, if you can write a song week in and week out. Jack did this. He had these gatherings for 35 years running, which is a lot of Mondays. I have never done the math, but so I used to do that, but then I was in this dry spell, and I thought, you know what? My apartment was even smaller than Jack's, so I didn't want to have a gathering in my apartment. But I thought it would be fun and maybe even a little more interesting to start a song club that wasn't limited to New York. There's another writer, I don't know if you know Bob Schneider, he's a songwriter in Boston, and he was doing a similar thing to what I'm about to describe, which is sending out a title every week to your friends, and then you have whatever it is, like 4 days to write a song and record it and send it back in, based, loosely on whatever the title is. So I thought that would be kind of a fun and interesting way for me to get back into writing again, because it would give me a deadline, and I always am more productive on deadlines. And there would be a little carrot at the end of the stick for me, which is that not only would I be writing a song, but potentially a dozen of my friends who are really inspiring writers would also be working on a song of their own with the same title. And so I'd send out a title every Thursday, and every Sunday would be like Christmas. I'd open up my inbox, and there'd be, all these songs from really great writers. Vienna Tang did a song. Tony Furtado was doing it for a while. I just called it Song Club because I couldn't think of anything better. It was a song club. So we never met in person, but the playfulness of having my friends writing and having this hard deadline got me writing again. And sure enough, in a year's time, I had written 50 songs. It turned out to be a really great thing, and a lot of those songs actually wound up on my Heart Collector record, and other people who were in the group at that time wound up recording some of these songs too. So it turns out that if you stick to it, good songs can come out of it. So during the song club period, I'm talking about 2009, 2010, that's when this was all going on. One week I got this email from Tony Furtado, who's a really great songwriter, and he said, "Hey man, I have an idea. This week, instead of writing from a title, what if we all wrote based on a painting? What if we took not necessarily a famous painting like the Mona Lisa, but just some painting and sent that to everybody and say, hey, why don't you write a song based on the imagery of this painting?" And I thought that was a really cool idea. I love the idea of, using imagery, instead of wordplay. Maybe that would tap into a different part of people's creativity and my own creativity. So without spending too much time thinking about it, I just looked on the internet for some paintings, and I can't even remember what got me to this specific painting. But the painting that we used this week, it's a painting by Edvard Munch, who's maybe most famous for the painting called The Scream, which shows, somebody with their hands on their face and their mouth wide open. But this is a more obscure painting called Self-Portrait Between the Clock and the Bed. If you look at this painting, it's basically a man who looks upwards of middle age, just based on his stature and his balding pattern and the grayness of his hair. And he's alone in a room, and to our left, his right, is an old grandfather clock. And to our right, there's a made up bed. And the only other things that we can see in this painting are other paintings. If you look around him, behind him on the walls, there's a whole bunch of paintings. There's no one else around. And there's something kind of lonely about the image, you know?
Well, I made up the bed the way that she likes it, and I polished the floor till it shines so bright. Then I oiled the gears in the grandfather clock, and I put on my best suit of blue and green.
Around the same time, I had taken a creative writing class with a writer named Linda Barry. And one of the exercises that she had us do in the class was think about a specific image from your memory and then start asking questions to yourself like, what time of day is it? What time of year is it? And who's in the image at the moment? And is anybody else coming or going from before or after? And questions like that. And she would then give us, like a 5-minute timer and ask us to just write and write and write for a little while. So I thought about those tools and those questions when I looked at this image, because I wanted to be able to create a story from basically one frame of a movie. That's basically what a painting is. It's one frame of a movie. One of the other things that Linda Barry talked about in her creative writing workshop was talking about imagery more than about, feelings. So I try to never say this guy is sad or this guy is lonely. I do tell all those things, but I try not to just blurt it out, and just let people draw their own conclusions when they add up all the images. In the first verse, I really just started with the things that were apparent. The bed is made, the floor is shiny, there's a grandfather clock, hopefully well oiled, and he's wearing green trousers and a blue jacket.
Well, I bought her a pair of pearl earrings. She sat by the mirror for half of the night. Then she went into town to visit an old friend. If she ever said thank you, it wasn't to me.
The pearl earring thing just came from the tiny little bit I know about painting. I know about that Vermeer painting, the girl with the pearl earring. I don't want to pretend I'm any kind of art scholar, but I know about, half a dozen paintings, and that was one of them. So I thought I'd just throw that in, even though I don't know that Edvard Munch and Vermeer have anything to do with each other. But I thought I'd say I bought her a pair of pearl earrings. And just by the look on this guy's face, in my mind, I imagined him as he was very generous to his lady friend, and she just kind of walked all over him. He does look a little bit like a bit of a pushover. I mean, that's how I imagined him anyway. So she sat by the mirror for half of the, here it is, he buys her a gift, and she just basically, it becomes a vehicle for her to admire her own self. And then when she's done looking at how pretty she looks in the mirror, she goes into town to visit a, quote unquote, old friend. If she ever said thank you, it wasn't to me. And the other thing is it doesn't rhyme. And I usually do like to rhyme. I'm kind of old fashioned in that way about songwriting, is I like things to rhyme. But I purposefully did not rhyme it. I don't know, there's something a little bit discordant about the image. And I thought, maybe by not rhyming my couplets, I could convey some of that. Eventually, when you get to the end of the second verse, there's another E sound. Green kind of rhymes with me. So you do get eventual rhymes, but it's that they're not easy rhymes. So the kind of rhyming that I'm using in this song it's not like, Little Jack Horner sat in a corner. It's a little more like things connect in the following verse, right? So that came out of, when I was writing songs every week, I noticed some of the habits that I had where like I was always using certain kinds of rhymes or certain kinds of meter or certain kind of chord progressions. And this is a real opportunity, this weekly song club thing, to break out of that and try some different kinds of rhymes just to see what happened. I mean, you could always go back to your bad habits if you want to, but I thought it was an opportunity to try and intentionally do some different things. So then I thought at that point it was time for a bridge. It's kind of a bloated bridge. Maybe it'd be nicer to call it a chorus. But I thought about, because I was living in New York, I thought about Greenwich Village. So I imagined this guy having once been a bit of a hero, almost like the Dave Van Ronk of painting or something, where he'd walk down the street and people would wave and know who he was. And then he had sort of fallen out of favor, either times changed and his paintings weren't popular anymore, or just by having his heart broken so badly, he just was sort of a shell of his old self. I don't really know which of those is true, but
They all call my name from the sidewalk cafe. There goes the Rembrandt of Sullivan Street. But then I lost my touch, and I miss it so much. It haunts me in my slumber. Look all around me, from floor to ceiling. The work that I've done, it can't speak for itself. It's the work of a man with a master's hand. But tonight I'm just painting by numbers.
again, there was a kind of a slow turning rhyme where slumber rhymes with numbers 4 lines later. I wanted to go back to the painting, so that's where the material of look all around me from floor to ceiling, the work that I've done, it can speak for itself. It's the work of a man with a master's hand, but tonight I'm just painting by numbers. That was the feeling that I had about this guy, that he really was a great painter at some point, but that he's just gutted, you know?
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask about Rembrandt. Was that just sort of picked for the sound of it, or?
As often as not, that's what I do. When I'm writing, I often write poetry first, and then the guitar is the last thing to come. What happens is I write stuff on paper thinking just about numbers and meter. I think it's a very nerdy way to write, but I enjoy it because it becomes like a crossword or a Sudoku or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed a painter with 2 syllables. I don't know that much about painting, but Rembrandt, he was a painter that people know. I didn't want to throw in a name where people were going to have to go to Google and say, "Wait, who was that? What was it?" I wanted somebody familiar enough that it would just come and go. Wouldn't be too big of a deal, but it's also fun to say. So what happens is I'll write a poem, and then before I start writing the music, I'll read it out loud. You know, it has to come off the page and through my body and out of my mouth. And that's where a lot of little tweaks, like, you know, Rembrandt or, you know, it could be a different painter. A lot of the changes that get made happen when it starts to actually, the words are coming out of my mouth. And even Sullivan Street, it's just fun to say that, to be honest. And there's a backstory to that, which there's a songwriter in New York named Richard Julian. He has a song, I can't remember the title of it, but he had a line in it when he first played it for me where he's going to make margaritas. And his original line was, "I'll make them better than the Mexicans on Sullivan Street." And I remember talking with Richard and saying, you know, kind of calling him out in a playful way, like, I don't think there's really any Mexican restaurants on Sullivan Street that I know of. Maybe you should say the Mexicans on Rivington Street, because down in the Lower East Side, there's a restaurant at the corner of Ludlow and Rivington called El Sombrero, or people just call it the Hat, that makes actually not very good margaritas. They have one of those machines that's just like a slushy machine. And I thought Rivington Street was fun to say as well as Sullivan Street, and it would be a little more accurate if anybody actually knew New York, you know?
Yep.
And this is one of those things that, like, does it really matter if you say Mexicans on Rivington Street or Sullivan Street? I don't know. But I felt like there was some kind of, balance made where I got to use Sullivan Street. So that line is kind of a tip of the hat to Richard Julian.
I like that idea of hiding little Yelp reviews inside songs.
Yeah, that's funny.
And if you come back to me now, we'll go by the Sunday Times, a little salt, a couple limes to beat the heat. You're gonna swear I'll make them better than the Mexicans on Rivington Street.
When I think of this song, I do imagine this guy walking through the village, the line about they all call my name from the sidewalk cafes. Even though it says, there goes the Rembrandt of Sullivan Street, I imagine him just walking down Bleecker Street kind of on a gray day. Not the kind of Bleecker Street of today, which is overrun with tourists and chain stores, but more like the Bleecker Street of the late 60s and early 70s when Van Ronk and Phil Oakes were around. And I just imagine this guy like in a smock on a gray day walking down the street, and a once celebrated guy who now his friends don't call out to him anymore, and he can't remember how to paint, and he probably hasn't washed his smock in who knows when, and all of his brushes are dry, and he just feels kind of lost in a world where he used to feel like a king. That's a little more than is spoken of directly in the song, but that's the image I have of this guy.
You can put all your eggs in one basket. You can hope for the light to hit them just right.
I'm just going to say something very stupid just because I thought it was kind of funny. So, obviously I Googled that Munch painting when preparing for this. So one of the things I did, I was wondering whether, like, the eggs in one basket image, I wondered if Rembrandt or somebody had done a famous painting of eggs or something. So I Googled it. And it turns out that there's a company called Rembrandt Food that specializes in egg whites.
Well, I wonder if I can get some kind of, sponsorship deal out of it. That's really funny. What can I say? I'm sure what happened when I was writing the song was I was Googling images of still lifes, which mostly are fruit and vegetables. I don't know that painters paint a lot of eggs. It would be probably boring for somebody like Rembrandt because there's not a lot of color.
Right.
But
yeah, no, I mean, it's a nice turn because you start out with this sort of cliche and then you have a little turn where, like, you think it means one thing and then it turns out it's sort of, it looked at through the artist's eyes as a subject for a painting.
Yeah, I don't want to say, well, check out this technique I used here and there. Like, a lot of stuff really just, I fall ass backwards into stuff and I feel very, very lucky.
Sure.
But in retrospect, I look at it now and I think, well, that's pretty good writing. That's pretty good.
But the light can play tricks on the eyes of a lover who only sees what he wants to see.
Basically, I wanted the song to be a 3-act song, and it is, at least in the sense that there's 3 verses. The first verse, all we get is the imagery of the guy. And he's talking about the girl, but she's not there. We just say, I made up the bed the way she liked it. I did all these things. I basically got the house in the way that she likes it. And then in the second verse, we actually get to meet her. We find out she's kind of a jerk and she doesn't appreciate him, and then she leaves. And then in the third and final verse, he's just kind of getting reflective, like, he has put all his eggs in one basket. We almost can imagine that he's put aside his painting just to dote over this woman who doesn't appreciate him, and she just leaves him alone with his work. And And then I thought it'd be fun to have some ideas about light and eyes, just because, again, I don't know anything about painting, but I know that painters use light and they use their eyes. And I thought it was kind of a way to say what I wanted to say, or have him reflect in a way that I wanted him to, the way that a painter might. But the kind of punchline of the song is that even a painter really only sees what he wants to see. So we all tell ourselves little sort of versions of the truth, and we try and light things the way we want to, but we can only go so far. And I'm telling you how I wrote it, but at this point I still haven't even picked up a guitar yet. So as I'm writing all of this stuff, I have just a vague sense of where the accents are, and where maybe I might want to go from 1 to 4 or from 5 to 1, or I have kind of like a very vague sketch of it. But I knew I wanted it to be kind of a waltz, and I was thinking it might be interesting if I made it kind of like a Willie Nelson song. So this is a song by Willie Nelson called Slow Down. And he says,
slow down, oh world, there's no hurry, 'cause my life ain't mine anymore. I live too fast, now it's too late to worry, and I'm too blue to cry anymore. I was a fool for the women. Now I'm just a fool, nothing more. So slow down, old world, there's no hurry, 'cause my life ain't mine anymore.
I've always loved how Willie Nelson could say in just a few lines, he just gets really to the core of heartbreak. He said in 10 lines what I wrote in 30 or 40 lines. You could put that whole lyric on a cocktail napkin. In fact, you should put that whole lyric on a cocktail napkin. That's the rightful place for it. It seems easy to write that kind of song, but in my experience, it's really not. When I can write a song that's that simple and that plain spoken, but doesn't sound dumb, then I feel like I will achieve songwriter nirvana.
I once had a way with the women, till one got away with my heart.
I'm a late bloomer as a singer. I didn't start singing until I was in my late 30s. I don't have the nuance that I wish I had, but I really, in the vocal on this, was trying to do my best Willie without sounding like a caricature or something. I really didn't want it to sound like that. But I love his phrasing, the way it's so conversational, and he'll rush ahead sometimes and wait sometimes, and it really ropes you into the story, the way he phrases things. And so since my song itself was very metric, one way to make it not seem so metric and symmetric is to be more elastic with the delivery. So I really tried to do that on this. In the studio and live, the main guitar part is capoed. Basically, when I did it on the record, I played the rhythm guitar part fairly straight, so that when I sang it, if the guitar was straight, I could do some of that kind of Willie Nelson phrasing stuff a little more easily. Mm-hmm. You have to have an Abbott to have a Costello. The rhythm guitar was kind of the straight man, and with the vocal, I could be a little more playful or freewheeling. And then on the guitar solo, I could even take more liberties, because as I overdubbed the solo, I wasn't having to guess where the next beat was going to fall. I knew the beat was going to fall right where the beat was supposed to fall. And so I could be a little more elastic and kind of falling down the stairs kind of feeling with the solo, which is what I wanted to do. It's not autobiographical, but I mean, I certainly have had my heart broken. I gave away too much of myself. I just let the relationship be all about the other person. And it can be something that is easy to fall into, to just take care of another person at the expense of taking care of yourself. But it never ends well, really, for either person. But I'd had a little bit of that go on several years before this song. And my emotional connection to the song really came from there. Every factual detail that could be different than what really happened is different, but I totally relate to this guy. So when I sing the song, it's not just an exercise in how can I copy Willie Nelson and use an interesting rhyme scheme. There is an emotional connection between me and this guy. Somehow you can change a lot of the facts and it's still a true story. If anyone likes it and wants to cover it or anything like that, I'd be tickled. I'm always surprised when people say, well, is it okay if I cover your song? Like, yes, if you like it and you want to sing it, feel free, have at it, make it your own. I'd love to hear somebody else's take on it.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you want to say?
I did want to mention, I mentioned a songwriter named Sam Phillips earlier, and she's somebody who I borrowed a title from. The title of the album, The Heart Collector, actually was something that I borrowed from a Sam Phillips song. She has a song called Edge of the World, which is from a record she made called Fan Dance. I'm always borrowing things that I can. I hope I'm never crossing any kind of lines where I'm using too much material. But in her song, The Edge of the World, the Heart Collector just gets one line in passing.
The heart collector had his hands on me.
And that's it. We don't get to learn any more about him. So I thought it'd be interesting to write a whole song about him. He's sort of a bit player in somebody else's song, and I wanted to explore that. So that's another song on The Heart Collector, but the album title actually comes from the song, and the song title came from Sam Phillips. So she's, I'd say if people are looking for an interesting writer to check out, you could do a lot worse than Sam Phillips. She's really wonderful.
Great. I'll pass that along. If people want to hear more of your music, what should they do?
They should go to my website. They could go to adamlevy.com. If you just want to check out lots and lots of my music, look me up on Bandcamp. I think almost all of my records are up there, and you can listen to pretty much everything for free.
If people want to find out, if you have shows or things, what's a good way for them to do that?
If you want to see my touring schedule and see if I'm coming to your town, you can go to my website, which is adamlevy.com, ADAMLEVY.com. And I'm just now getting my tour schedule together for 2015. So if I'm not coming to your town, but you'd like me to, just drop me a note. I'm going to say my email. It's not top secret. It's just adam@adamlevy.com. So you can get in touch, and who knows, maybe I will come to your town.
Excellent. So my name's Jacob Haller, and my website's at music.jwgh.org if anyone wants to check out my music or when I have shows. I also have a blog for Tell Me About Your Song on Tumblr. It's at yoursongpodcast.tumblr.com, and I'll post notes and links to all the stuff we've been talking about and all of Adam's websites. I also have a page on Facebook for it. If you search for Tell Me About Your Song on Facebook, you'll find it. And if you're not subscribed to Tell Me About Your Song already, you can subscribe to it on iTunes or Stitcher, where you can also rate and review it. And I would love to hear what you have to say about it. So with all that said, we're going to go out by listening to the song we've been discussing, Painting by Numbers, from the album The Heart Collector by Adam Levy. Thanks for listening.
Well, I made up the bed the way that she likes it, and I polished the floor till it shines so bright. Then I oiled the gears in the grandfather clock, and I put on my best suit of blue and green. Well, I bought her a pair of pearl earrings. She sat by the mirror for half of the night. Then she went into town to visit an old friend. If she ever said thank you, it wasn't to me. They all call my name from the sidewalk cafe. There goes the Rembrandt of Sullivan Street. But then I lost my touch, and I miss it so much. It haunts me in my slumber. Look all around me, from floor to ceiling. The work that I've done, it can't speak for itself. It's the work of a man with a master's hand. But tonight I'm just painting by numbers. You can put all your eggs in one basket. You can hope for the light to hit them just right. But the light can play tricks on the eyes of a lover who only sees what he wants to see. They all call my name from the sidewalk cafe. There goes the Rembrandt of Sullivan Street. But then I lost my touch, and I miss it so much. It haunts me in my slumber. Look all around me, from floor to ceiling. The work that I've done, it can't speak for itself. It's the work of a man with a master's hand. But tonight I'm just painting by numbers. Yeah, tonight I'm just painting by numbers.
Strangely enough, I'm just going to move along to a completely different thing,
Okay.
I guess. Let's see. Oh, well, this is also kind of related. So you had the song club.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done some, I've never done a song a week thing, but I've occasionally done these song challenges where you're assigned a theme or a phrase or something and have to write a song about it. And always one of the fascinating things is that, it's me and 3 other songwriters or whatever, all writing inspired by the same thing, and yet the songs are completely different. The inspiration that was taken from the theme is completely different. You would not necessarily even guess that those songs had anything in common. So I'm just curious if you remember other songs that people wrote on this. Did they do any kind of similar things? Have people recorded any of those songs? I'm just kind of curious about that stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what other people's songs were on this particular song. It's just harder to remember because everyone had different titles. For the most part, in
Right.
Song Club, every week the song titles were the same, and this was one where it wasn't. But I will tell you sort of a funny story, which is that I got an email just from some person I didn't know just through my website because other people have recorded Song Club songs. Among them is, like I mentioned, the Mastersons. Also, there's a guy named Doug Womble, who's a really great songwriter in New York. And anyway, this guy wrote to me, and he wrote, he said, "Man, I don't want to start any trouble, but I got Doug Womble's new record, and I noticed that a lot of the song titles were kind of the same ones that you used on the Heart Collector. And I mean, I don't want to, it's none of my business, but I don't know, I thought you should know, And
That's great.
yeah, I thought it was great. So I don't even remember what I wrote back to him, but yeah, it has been a lot of Song Club songs have turned up on other people's records. Garrison Starr recorded one of her Song Club songs. Doug Womble recorded a couple. The Mastersons recorded a few. There's a song on my record, The Heart Collector, which is called "Would It Really Be a Sin?" And the Mastersons recorded that. Doug Womble recorded a song called "The Heart Collector." So it's funny to see how these things kind of wind up on other people's records. I just can't, off the top of my head, remember what people wrote about this painting because everyone's title is different. Just the way at least the way my memory works, it would be helpful if I could remember what the titles were. But I could go back and look if you want me to.
I wouldn't. Yeah, no. Just if anything stood out, I don't.
Okay.